7E. 7E. Reconsideration of discussion action regarding expenses related to the reconstruction of State Highway 175 multi-use path. This item was brought to the board by two trustees, Trustee Voss and Trustee Shea. Now, there's a couple problems here. First of all, the reconsideration of a motion that took place 2 months ago, according to Robert's Rules of War order, is prohibited. You can have a reconsideration in the month of, in June, when Trustee Voss made the motion to approve. All of us approved that motion. You can reconsider the following month, in the month of July. Nobody did that. We are now in August, and it's not permitted. However, I'll show a little compassion here, because we have a couple of trustees that are not that experienced in parliamentary procedure. Trustee Voss has only been on board since April. Trustee Shea, a little over a year. They should know better. But rather than exclude it completely, which I really should do, I'll entertain a motion to reconsider. And that motion can come from any of us, because all of us approved the original motion. So if anybody...
I'll make the motion, Mr. President.
A motion on the floor
to reconsider the State Highway 175 multi-use path.
Do I have a second? I have a second by Sandy. Now, the thing that is, and I'm going to ask both of you why you brought this forward, and I'll start with Sandy. Why, after 2.5 months, why did you bring a motion back for consideration after you were the one that made the motion?
The way it was presented, it seemed like we had option A, sidewalks, or option B, walkways. Was there ever an entertainment nothing. Denial. Oh. And then after the meeting, I don't know if there was a lot of people, residents came up and expressed their displeasure with the walkway.
You didn't see the handout that said state law required us to do this? Did you prepare for the meeting?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Trustee, were you done with your comment?
Yes.
Trustee Shea, why did you force this to come back to the board?
Well, not in a condescending way. That seems to be the mode right here, right now. So if you want to just back that off, I'll tell you. State Highway 175, the multi-use path, what we were shown, what we were told, wasn't what was shown by DOT. I went up and I questioned the guy from Westbrook, and he already said this was a done deal on the 175 roundabout and on the path. That they received notification from Josh, and it was my intention that all of this come back under one package. We had to wait until DOT gave the final presentation at Cabela's to see exactly what was going on. At the school board, we were shown one set of plans that didn't match what was shown at the Cabela's. So if there was surveying errors, and in the packet tonight from Howard Wolf, on behalf of the school board, he outlines a number of problems we never got to hear because of the time limitation that you respected. In that, we found some severe deficiencies that not only go with the safety of the kids in front of the school, it was brought to our attention by a number of residents also that they didn't want this. And I think that it's time that we sit back and look at this a little bit better and really listen to what people have to say here. I've taken a posture against this because I don't want a sidewalk anywhere here. We've got some in downtown Richfield. We'll fix them. A 10-foot multi-use trail. You can't use it. It isn't a multi-use trail. You haven't got the ability to put a snowmobile on it. You can't put a four-wheeler on it. You can't put horses on it. What do you have on it? You have the ability to pull. The school district almost has to pull a bus from that entire subdivision where this would go alongside now. That's why they took a hardline stand on it. We'd rather have the kids in the buses than walking to and from school. That's why I did this, and I'm standing firm on it.
I just want to circle back for a moment to the letter that you presented the board. It is a letter that is not signed.
That's correct.
It's not on any letterhead. It's got the word draft on it. It is addressed to somebody, dear so-and-so. We've read one page of it approximately. And so I want the record to indicate that this is not an official document from the school.
And you're absolutely right. And as I explained, that it is a draft letter. The school board will be meeting next week for the final letter that will be coming. The letter that you received is the draft letter that will be presented, and you're welcome to attend the school board meeting to voice your opinion. And I'd ask you to attend, because you'll see the same letter coming back on the
sent us an email to confirm that this was an original document. So until I receive the original document.
So are you doubting my credibility on this? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I've got a document that is not signed. It's draft. It could be from the school board. I don't have any reason to say that it isn't, but I have no official document from the school board. Now, it's going to be put into the record, just like we said at the beginning of the meeting. I'm noting only that it's not an official document.
So noted with the letter, or with the word draft on it. I think that was amply discussed and explained to everybody, and that everybody in the audience understands that it's a draft. If you'd like to come to the school board meeting next week, you're going to hear the same letter being presented, and we will be sending you a letter along with some additional documents now that somebody else has found something else.
It's unfortunate that the school board did not send an email indicating that this would become an official document, but we'll wait until we hear from them. Josh, would you, now, we're within a motion to reconsider. Josh, would you add comment, if you like, to present information to the board? Because obviously, if we have a motion to reconsider, and that passes, we go back to going back to discuss the original motion. So,
sure, Mr. President, trustees. Let me just give a synopsis, I guess, of my understanding of the situation. I haven't been fully briefed until just now about what we were exactly reconsidering, what the purpose of reconsideration was for, or what exactly wanted to be done. So I'm just providing you with information from the Transportation Code. I should note I inaccurately put the state statute. It's not state statute. It's the Transportation Code. It's Chapter 75 of the Transportation Code. So I guess I would just say please don't confuse facts with these as anything other than facts. Prior to the June 1st Wisconsin Department of Transportation Communications, I have met, and I think somebody had asked about this, so I have met with DOT on a number of different occasions regarding the project for Highway 175. Largely those conversations were relative to storm water improvements, improving drainage issues, particularly on the northeast corner of Curtis Road and 175. In May, the DOT came to me along with the Westbrook engineers, who was consulting engineer on this project, and they inquired the status of our multi-use path parking streetscaping improvements, and utility relocations. And when I say utility relocation, just to be clear, there isn't anything to do with sewer and water. It's about overhead electric utilities. That was prior to June 1st. We had that initial conversation. Then there was a plan to put that item on the June 16th village board agenda. Shortly after that May meeting, I met with DOT. In the early part of June, they came to me and said there's a new transportation code that has been adopted as of November. Governor Doyle and the Democratic legislature approved this new code that requires sidewalk and bikeways both to be installed on projects that meet certain criteria. We discussed being short the criteria that they were talking about. The project manager insisted that we fell within that criteria and that it was his belief that we are subject to the regulations of the Administrative Code, Chapter 75. So that was on June 8th. On 2 days later, I prepared and sent out the packet for the June 16th meeting, which you all have and reviewed. So let me just talk a little bit about Chapter 75. We never did get into this at the last meeting. I did state that this was my recommendation to do a multi-use path was in my purview compromise to the alternative of bikeways and sidewalks. And when I discussed it with the project manager, that's what I communicated to him, that we had absolutely no interest in doing sidewalk number one and also bikeways. I communicated him that at that time that we were more than likely willing to compromise on something along the lines of a multi-use path, but there is no way that I could commit to anything similar to a sidewalk. So we came to the meeting on the 16th. That is when I couldn't quote specifically what I said. I didn't go back and listen to the tape, but I had stated that those were what I believe to be our options, were that at this point, given this chapter of the Transportation Code, we have a requirement to install a sidewalk. I then asked the board to give me authority and direction to send a letter to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation saying, we understand the requirements of Chapter 75. We respectfully decline and request that we maintain the philosophy of the multi-use path. So with that, as I went through that process in that 2-day window, I reviewed Chapter 75, and there's a number of things that I think need to be addressed. I have heard different quotes regarding the Transportation Code, and taken out of context, they can certainly seem as though they might be a loophole for us to get out of this. However, I think if you look closely at the code, it'd be very difficult at best for us to get out of the requirement, short of what we've done already, and that is send a letter saying we prefer a multi-use path to any other option. If you go through the document, I'll just hit on maybe 10 things or so that I think are extraordinarily important, and are the things that led me to my recommendation back in June. First is in 75.02 sub 1. It explicitly states that except as provided in this chapter, the authority shall include bikeways and sidewalks. When it uses the word authority, that's referring to the municipality in this case. So sidewalks and bikeways shall be included. 75.02 sub 3. Here it talks about, this is where I thought we might have some room for the compromise. Although this isn't ironclad, I thought this was the area where I might be able to convince the DOT that bike path may be a better alternative for us as a semi-rural community than sidewalk. It says paths can be used to supplement on-road bicycle accommodations, etc., etc. Goes on to the end of the paragraph saying a path may be considered along a controlled access highway as defined in statute 990.01 sub 5R. statutes having a speed limit of 45 miles per hour or higher. That road in that section where we proposed the multi-use path or sent a letter suggesting that is 45 miles per hour. The next point that I would make is relative to 75.02 sub 4. This is where I thought it was in our best interest to make some kind of compromise rather than send a letter stating we're adamantly opposed to it. The department shall, and the department is the Department of Transportation, the department shall refuse to provide any state funds or federal funds as appropriated under section 20.395 or 20.866 of statutes for any highway construction or reconstruction that does not include bikeways and sidewalks. It goes on to say, if any authority determines, and authority is the village, determines to omit any bikeway or sidewalk under this chapter, the department may request from the authority a written justification for the omission and shall deny state funds or federal funds appropriated under the state statutes. The next section that I want to mention is 70. Let me just clarify that a little bit. So basically, the burden of proof becomes on us based on state statutes in Chapter 75, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Then it goes on to talk about different types of municipalities, 75.06 specifically. I do have some other comments that we could address later on, but in the interest of time, 70.06 sub 5. 70.06. I said sub 5. 75.06 refers to the absence of need. Specifically, sub D. The Village of Richfield, based on this criteria that I had talked about before, would be considered a semi-urban district. We do not qualify for an outlying district based on the language there. Furthermore, we don't qualify as an urban area based on 23 U.S.C. 101 sub 8, as listed later on page 51. The urban area is a community with a population greater than 50,000. So basically anything between the outlying district and a community of 50,000 plus falls into the semi-urban district category. Just after that, in 75.06 sub 2, it talks about any authority may not omit sidewalk under this section in any semi-urban district. It again goes on to say in semi-urban districts and urban areas, an authority may not omit a bikeway under this section if the highway has at least 1,500 average daily traffic in the design area. This entire project has an average of over 5,500 vehicles. And then 75.06 sub 5, and then I only have one other. 75.06 sub 5, specifically the second sentence. If the authority, again that is expects bikeway or sidewalk use to increase over the design life of the highway project, the authority shall give greater weight to use projected for second half of the design life than for the first half of the design life. And when they say design life, they mean a 20-year span for the road project. So with that, my comment and thought process was we have Reflections Village subdivision there. We also have Fairway Fields subdivision. We have Mount Moraine subdivision. We have Skyline subdivision. The DOT will look at information based on our Smart Growth Plan. Our Smart Growth Plan currently calls for a walkable hamlet district to the northeast of this intersection. So those things combined, I don't believe we can make an argument, I shouldn't say legitimate, an argument successful to the DOT. The last thing then is 75.07, and I thought this was probably the most important section because it talks about the specific ways of getting out of following the code. Notwithstanding this section, set 75.02, An authority may omit sidewalks from a highway construction or reconstruction project if the local government unit refuses to agree in writing to maintain them. So if we don't sign a contract with the DOT, we can omit sidewalks and bikeways. And it goes on to say, however, a refusal is valid under this section only if shown by ordinance, resolution, or order of the city, village, town, or county in which the highway lies. So if we wanted to go ahead and do that, it would have to be by resolution. The last part is the most important part. This section applies only in areas which all of the following apply. Number 1A, there are no sidewalks in the highway system under the authority's jurisdiction. Immediately, we don't qualify. There are sidewalks. They're in downtown Richfield, and the state has indicated as such, and they told us. B, the village, city, town, etc. has no ordinance that requires the installation of sidewalk or that requires the removal of snow and ice from sidewalks. We do have an ordinance that requires that. It is Chapter 50.03 sub B. And then the last thing is, the village lacks sufficient equipment for the efficient removal of snow or ice from sidewalks. I guess this one is a bit vague. I suppose you can make an argument, as was made earlier, that maybe we don't. I don't think. We certainly have shovels, blowers, and skid steers as well as trucks. Given the fact that the other two certainly apply anyway, I don't know that it's relevant. So, based on that analysis, I certainly wouldn't have felt comfortable coming to you and saying, let's tell the DOT that we don't want anything. My suggestion was to, as I stated at that meeting, to go with the compromise and say, well, a bike multi-use path is more in line with the country way of life, as I wrote in the letter. We would prefer to go that route.
Thank you, Josh. That was an overwhelming bit of evidence that showed me that I did my homework in June. I understood then, as I do now. We don't have a lot of choices because of the Doyle administration and what they did, other than someday the Walker administration rescind that law. But I understood fully what and why I voted for Trustee Voss's motion, that I selected the lesser of two evils. I don't really want either one right now in the village. We don't have that choice. And you pointed that out, Josh, very, very distinctly in June and again this evening. So again, I felt I could, at the beginning of this item, just say, you know, you two that brought forward this reconsidered motion, I could have eliminated it right off the bat. But I felt, since we had a large crowd here tonight, I wanted everybody to hear the overwhelming evidence that we all should have realized in June, and why we all unanimously voted the way we did in June. And I don't see any reason to reconsider this tonight. Further discussion.
Mr. President, that's always very nice to say that, and again to be condescending to us, but since we've found out some more additional information, perhaps we should finish the rest of the story. There's an overwhelming body of people out in the audience that don't want a $300,000 path that goes from nowhere to nowhere. We have an option that's in the statute here also. Excuse me. In the rules of order, we have to vote on this before I can go into the discussion phase. That's what it's just about.
We're discussing whether or not we should reconsider. And that's what we're doing here.
I was just saying, I made the comment rather than going into this week's meeting. I was said the trustee say was, I didn't know if going into this was actually the reconsideration itself, whereas you wanted to vote first on reconsideration. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject. I just wanted to make sure we were following the proper procedure.
Right. And, you know, if we followed proper procedure, none of this would be happening right now. But I felt a little compassionate here to at least hear the evidence. So we're at the point debating, and the reconsideration is, that debate is allowable as to whether or not we should reconsider. So if there's comment related to whether or not we should reconsider, then let's have that. If not, we are ready to vote. So if nobody else is ready, I'm going to uncall.
Done. I'm going to continue because that was...
Well, then you should ask me to recognize you, Trustee Shea. Please go ahead.
I believe I did, and I'm going to continue. Thank you. In the statute...
Remember, Mr. Shea, that I was compassionate enough to bring this forward. So your comment about being condescending is, you know, duly
It's accurate.
No, it isn't.
It is accurate.
Proceed.
I will. As I was saying, in the statute, since we found out that there's no signed agreement or contract with DOT regarding the cost sharing, the future maintenance on the walking and multipaths, and the street parking, the streetscaping, the 100% of the real estate costs that we're going to incur, and the acquisitions of the utility relocations, I think I find it in here except as provided in this section, an authority must agree in writing with the department to maintain these sidewalks as a condition of eligibility for state and federal funds. The city of, I believe it was Brookfield, said that they're not interested in maintaining these paths. DOT said, okay, you don't have to pay for it. I'm opting out under this clause here that we don't need to have this. If they want to put it in, go ahead. The school district is going to take some action on this also. And that's why I'm telling you that before you go and you make this $60,000 mistake, which ultimately is $300,000 against the taxpayers, you might want to reconsider it under this. There is an out, and there are other communities that have opted out of this. No one wants to be told that they need a path or a trail to nowhere at the cost of the taxpayers because of what's occurring in the landscape at this time. So if you want to go to the call the question right now, please, because I'm ready to vote.
Well, Mr. Josh, do you have additional information?
I don't necessarily have additional information, and I respect Mr. Trustee Shea's point. The only thing that I would say, just reading what's here, and I don't know anything about any other communities fighting this. I don't know how they could. It's brand new. It's effective January 1st of 2011. That's not to say that's not happening. However, later on in that section that you just quoted, as I said before, you can't take a piece of it and say it makes it valid. It makes it invalid. It goes on to state that that section that you just quoted, specifically, I'll quote it, this section applies only in areas with all of the following apply. There is no sidewalk in the highway system under the authority's jurisdiction. The village has no ordinance that requires the installation of sidewalk or that requires removal of snow and ice from sidewalk. And the village lacks sufficient equipment for efficient removal. I'm not suggesting that there is another community. All I'm saying is that I don't think that's an accurate interpretation of 75.07. If you read it in its entirety, it is pretty clear. They're requiring us to put sidewalk in. My belief is, and I don't know this for a fact, but from side conversations with different individuals, engineers, and DOT officials, I shouldn't think DOT officials, they're not officials, they're engineers who worked for the DOT at one time. This specific section is tied back to federal and state funding. The feds have new requirements, and in order to get federal funding, this is become a requirement for municipalities in semi-urban districts. So they made this law with the intent of saying, well, the only way we can pay for your improvement is with federal dollars. We'll tie the federal dollars to the state dollars, and we'll tie all of that to this requirement. if there is somebody that's gotten out of it, that would certainly be something new. I don't know how that could be possible because we're the only project, according to the project manager of the Highway 175 project, that has a up-to-date, pardon me for my ignorance on the term here, but environmental study done, which is stated in this code. So the other projects throughout the state aren't at that point. I guess I'm not saying it's not happening. I just don't know of it. And that section, I don't believe. I would disagree with the way you interpreted it.
All those in favor of reconsideration,
Can I just ask one very general question?
please do.
Does the DOT listen to the majority of the village at all? So if we have, 75% of the village who does not want this walkway at all, do they take that into consideration? And you might not know the answers.
For the 75%, 11,000 people don't want it.
That's not a proven statistic, but I'm just saying we have a lot of people who don't. But it's a general
There's
question.
11,000 people, 8,500 voters. So,
It was a general question that I'm asking.
yeah, okay.
For relative to this specific code, it doesn't appear to me that there is any consideration necessarily for that. I know that is the case for other things, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. But specific to this code, if it's there, I don't see it. This seems, after reading through this 3 or 4 times, and then Community Service Coordinator Healy and I both bouncing this back and forth, it seems pretty clear to me that they're trying to tie this to something. And it seemed logical when I talked to the engineers, and that was immediately their response. This ties federal funding to state funding to us doing this. So I don't know if it's part of a federal program that they're trying to promote sidewalks and bike paths and things like that. It certainly seems that way. I don't know if that answered your question, but I don't believe so.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the reconsideration to, with regard, I'm going to get this right for the record. There was a motion and a second on the floor to reconsider the action that was taken in June regarding expenses related to the reconstruction of State Highway 175, the multi-use path. All those in favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye. Aye. We have 2 votes. All those opposed, nay. Abstain. It's a tie vote, and I believe in a tie it fails. So we had Trustee Loss, Trustee Shea voting in favor, Trustee Nye and President Jeffers voting against. Trustee Brander abstained, correct? Motion fails. We stay with the original motion in June.